Exactly. Yeah. So by nature, we mean our DNA, any predispositions, anything that was group selected, and by nurture, we mean anything from socio-economic, what's available, peer pressure, exposed to some things and not others.
Well,
That's the
the
thing.
strange thing about the nurture component, insofar as it is separable, I mean, first, just to be clear, it is separable in the sense that once you control for genetic difference, I mean, in the case of identical twins, then the differences between those people, in the case of people, it has to be a matter of environment, right? Because nothing's left.
Yeah,
And then once you control for environment, once you have a perfectly matched environment insofar as that's possible, then the differences between people are genetic because they've been given exactly the same food and input and parenting. And, again, never quite possible, but in some limit, you can dissect out these two variables. But they interact fluidly. And so it is often just misleading to talk about genes and environment separately because,
yes.
like, if you have a genetic propensity to be an early reader, right, and to be really, and so then you experience very little frustration in learning to read. I mean, you sort of learn to read by accident. Your parents notice that about you, that you love books. They encourage that. They surround you with books. You begin to find your way toward books because that's what you like to do. So you begin to sculpt your environment in conformity with this genetic propensity. And so at that point, what's genes and what's environment? You're just obsessed with books. And, it might have gotten started because any
Yeah.
impediment to your learning to read at the first provocation was removed. And now you're the person who's asking for books for Christmas. And that
Yeah.
now that looks like your environment and it looks like your parental behavior. But
Well, that's very interesting because
there's no boundary.
that's very interesting because I thought I was born with a love of learning, which I still think I probably was. But you having said that, because of my economic situation, I couldn't have anything but books.
Hmm.
My mum couldn't afford anything, but I knew I could have any book. She'd make sure I could get that book, or a
Right.
library was free. So that's a mixture of both as well, isn't it? That's
Yeah.
very interesting. I'd
Yeah.
never thought about that before.
Yeah. But
And of course, we turbocharge nurture as well. Like someone a kid who likes a bit of tennis and is 6 foot, 12, and you teach. So you go, you're going to be a tennis player, and you make sure they are. So opportunity as well. Yeah, yeah, it's fascinating.
yeah. But unfortunately, well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your view from the point of view of being a parent, very little, it seems, based on all current research, that very little of the environmental influence is due to the parents' conscious attempt to create a wonderful life or
Really?
failing to do so for the child. Yeah, I mean, so the environment really seems to be more a matter of the influence of friends and everything kind of outside the home. I mean, this is a difference that accounts for so much of the difference between siblings, right? They have this non-shared environment and even have very different environmental experiences in the
And
home.
is that because of the age that things matter more? Like they're only with the parents for the first
Hmm.
4 or 5 years, and then they're probably with other kids more than the parents when they're active and learning.
Yeah, it could be some of that. And on some level, I mean, once you recognize that as a parent, your main contribution to your kids has been the genes you gave them. It's not to say you can't screw up terribly. I mean, obviously, if you hurl your kids out the window and then you've killed them and you're a bad parent and you've exerted a decisive environmental influence on them. But within the normal bounds of being a decent parent, there's just not that much you can deliberately do to change the trajectory of your kids. And
Mm.
therefore you're sort of you can seizing the good end of this, being already a loving person who wants the best for your kids, you can kind of relax in a way that many parents are unable to relax when they think it's all on them, on a day-to-day basis to make sure their kids,
Also,
love
you only
books as
gave
much as
them
they can.
you only gave them 50% of your genes, and you can blame the other
Yes.
partner
Yeah.
on all the bad ones.
By all
That's
means, do
it.
that. Yeah.
Or you might have given them your bad 50%. That's the other thing. You
Yeah.
can't you can't choose what 50% they get.
I can assure
That's
you, I held what I was holding back was even better. Yeah.
yeah.
You could have been somebody.
Yeah. When does so here's a slightly related to that. When does a baby start being aware of itself and wanting to okay, let's get to it. When does a baby know it's alive? When does a baby start thinking? You know, because
Mm.
it is just a blank sponge when it's not thinking thoughts, is it? It has no language, it doesn't understand anything, it has no knowledge, so it can't think, can it? It can feel hungry and it can cry for no reason. But when would you say a baby is thinking? What age?
Well, it depends what you mean by thinking in the end. I mean, obviously, conscious linguistic thought comes later, but
Hmm.
there's certainly evidence of thinking, in the form of cognition, and
Hmm.
even what we would recognize as moral cognition very early. I mean, long before any productive language. I mean, kids, if you show them a puppet show of various moral actors, right? You have a kind of good puppet and a bad puppet, or a
Yeah.
cooperative puppet and an uncooperative one. It can show or seem to show a preference for the good over the bad, and which is to say, it can distinguish the behavior. And I mean, that happens around 6 months or so, I think, and that's before a single word comes out of that baby. So it's hard to know
But
what thought
is
is
that a
in that
moral
case.
decision, or is it fear versus safety? Because some things they wouldn't be moral; they would just, it would
Yeah,
rather
it's
be
more like
like going
attentional preference. Yeah.
right. So when does the child learn to lie? When it eats the cake, and you go, "Did you eat the cake?" It knows it's in trouble,
Hmm.
and it says no. When does it learn to
Right.
lie as a choice that helps it in
Yeah. So
life?
there is a lot of research on this that goes under the name of theory of mind. Theory of mind is the representation of the minds of others, right? So the understanding in each of us that other people have beliefs and expectations that can be different from our own, and therefore they can be manipulated or misled, right? You can give someone a false belief, which then they would operate under, and that's what a lie is, right? So someone's asking you what's true, and you, in a consciously calculated way, misrepresent what you know to be true, knowing that they will then have a false belief, and that will affect their behavior and expectations. So,
Yeah.
short of having a view of other minds, again, this is somewhat misleadingly titled theory of mind in science. It's not like it's a theory, but you really can't lie. I mean, you can effectively lie, but you can't consciously lie. So kids don't tend to develop that until they're around 4, which is pretty late.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
they're so inept at understanding that people have other points of view that they just can't. So the classic test here is you get two little dolls, and they put them in a dollhouse. They're in a room together, and you tell a story. One leaves the room, and then the remaining one picks up an object and hides it somewhere else, and then the other doll comes back, and you ask the kid, where will this doll that came back think the object is? And until about the age of 4, they always point to where the object now is, not recognizing the significance that the doll was out of the room when the object was moved.
Right. Right.
So they don't
Okay.
have a sense of the other's perspective. So anyway, that insofar as that's a valid test of this, it does
So the
seem that
first lie.
it's about
Okay.
four
So the
four
first lie is
years old.
just. So yeah. So that would be them. My example is them knowing that this is a shortcut for an easier life. So if I'm in trouble, if I say I ate the cake, I say I don't I didn't eat the cake, then I'm not in trouble. So that's a pure what's best in this situation. Then it develops that they tell the truth and they get rewarded, or the parent knows they're lying and it's worse. So all that then develops this sense of morality and, altruism versus selfishness or whatever. When do you think they start understanding what we call the white lie, where you tell a lie to save someone's feelings?
Hmm. Yeah, that's definitely later on.
That's very sophisticated, that, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, and it's I actually don't know when that reliably starts. I mean, it's a much more nuanced kind of social cognition when you have a sense that you would be hurting somebody's feelings by just blurting out
Well, it
the
but it
truth of what
might
you
be
think.
that. You see, it might be altruism. It might be, "I can't stand them to be upset, I'll tell a lie." Or it might be being nice to people rewards me. They like me more, they share their sweets with me. If I say,
Mm,
"I like your hat," they give me a sweet. So it might be altruism, or it might
mm,
be
yeah.
the lie doesn't matter, but it benefits me. It
Psy-
benefits me to tell a lie.
Psychopathic manipulation. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, but no one would say it was a bad thing, would they? No one would say that was a bad thing. It's still nicer to be kind and compliment someone, even if then you're rewarded. That's my thing about altruism. I don't really care that it's rewarded, because I think it makes the world a better place.
Mm.
If someone feels good about helping people and giving their money away, then so be it. There's much worse things to feel good about than
Oh yeah.
helping the
Yeah.
world. So I don't mind that distinction about whether anything's truly altruistic or not. I don't care that it is or isn't. It's better to be kind.
But I would even push it further in that direction. I think it's very good to be psychologically rewarded by that pro-social behavior. I mean, you want that kind of, flywheel effect
Yeah.
psychologically where you love the feeling of making the world a better place.
Yes.
That's a good thing to have going.
Yes. Well, exactly. Well, some you know compulsive behavior is good. It's good to some addictions are good. It's good to be addicted to exercise.
Mm,
That's a good.
right.
So it depends.
God, that's such a great. It's rare that I feel the pleasure of a memory this keenly because this is the kind of memory I don't think I ever would have had. It's like nothing in my environment would have sparked it, but I have a vivid memory of being a kid. I don't know what age, and the encyclopedia salesman was in the house pitching my mom on the complete set of the Encyclopedia Britannica,
Yeah.
and it was that pitch, and I just desperately wanted this encyclopedia, and I'm like, well, I'm just rooting for the encyclopedia salesman to prevail on my mother, and it was exactly that pitch. It was just like this is an investment in your son's future,
Of course.
but I just remember being the kid just pining for this set of books. Yeah, it
Of
was really a
course.
delicious memory.
I remember, you might remember this. Do you remember a thing in the sort of 70s and 80s called the splat mat?
No.
Right. So I don't know if it was American or English, but it was basically a towel that you put under your baby's high chair. Okay. And it had splat mat written on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I saw a documentary about inventions. And this guy said, no, the interesting thing, he said the splat mat was literally a towel, right? A towel cost £1 and a splat mat cost £10. But buying it meant you were a good parent.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly how they get you with those things. You've got to be seen with the splat mat. If you put a towel down, you're a bad parent. It's literally the same thing, but you've spent more, so you care more. And that's exactly the promise. That is exactly the
Mm-hmm.
promise that you're a bad parent. If you don't want your kid to get into heaven, you're a bad parent.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's kind of an adorable experience with my daughter. I was reading her the Harry Potter novels and finding myself getting choked up
That's funny.
at various points through them, but I didn't want to, for whatever reason, didn't want to just show her that. So I found myself, I was trying to conceal my crying or, stifle it by coughing. And,
Oh.
so she, but we had, whatever it was, hundreds of hours, through the course of these novels, right? Because I read her the whole series, and she's getting older. I guess that's probably happened over the course of at least a year. So she's getting older and more sophisticated as the books progress, and she's continuing to listen to me cough. And so the first volumes, she just thought I was coughing, but by the time we got to the end to the last book, she said to Annika, my wife, Daddy keeps coughing while he's reading me Harry Potter, thinking that I don't know he's crying.
But just out of interest, just I don't want to put you on the spot, but why didn't you want to let her think you were crying?
Good question, because I'm not embarrassed by it. It's just like in the moment.
Is it you don't want to worry her? Maybe you don't want to worry her that there's
Yes,
something wrong.
yeah. Well, that's one thing. Like she would not have gotten what about the moment was making me cry. I don't think these were sad bits. These were
She
more like,
probably was worried. She probably thought you have a terrible lung
yeah,
disease. It was even
exactly.
worse. So
Yeah,
he doesn't cry, but I tell you, he hasn't got long to live by this.
yeah.
Oh
So,
wow.
but it was like kind of I'm sure there were moments like where somebody was being especially noble, or more of the sort
Yeah.
you just described, and that gets to me.
Oh, and me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. Nobility. That again. Honor. Fighting justice, integrity.
Yeah. All.
Anything
Yeah.
like that. Loss. Yeah. Well, we've solved that again. We've solved everything again.
Our work
Yeah.
is done.
Yeah. 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 Good. Well.